I'll tell you a story, true soul, about a man who sold himself piece by piece. He had everything. A wonderful wife, a brilliant daughter. They lived not far from here. His wife died too young.
Started doing cinematics. We actually really didn't know what we were doing in the beginning, and we had to learn gradually that cinematics involves lighting, it involves performance capture, and performance direction, and camera placement, and so forth, special effects. There's really a lot of disciplines that come in every single note of cinematic dialogue that needs to be created. And so whenever you made a change in the narrative, or you made a change to make the game better, that had a huge impact on what we call the waterfall downstream, because you started at where the script was, and then we had all these disciplines that needed to work with one another, and that could go really, really far. So for instance...
Hey, ladies and gents, welcome back to Midgame Life Crisis. I am your host, Inconsistency. This is the mythical beast they call Werewolf. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. Did you read about these latest details about the development issues Larian Studios had with Baldur's Gate 3? Don't know if you heard about it.
Yeah. This is all things that came up with in his interviews in Digital Dragons conference in Poland.
In Poland. Yeah, that's where they opened their new studio, right?
Yeah, so there was lots of Q&A and open floor stuff there, and Swen Vincke, the CEO of Larian, he had some interesting replies to some of the questions about the development of Baldur's Gate 3. He described lots of development problems during the development of this game. I mean, the company was, you could say, aiming a bit over its head. They started with like 120 employees, and by the time they finished the game, they were like 450 employees.
We should mention spread across 7 locations around Europe. They have basically 7 studios.
Today.
The 7th one being the one they opened right now in Poland.
Yeah, so they tripled in size in years, sure.
Yeah.
But they tripled in size during the development of one game.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so that's a huge change. That's huge growth.
It's actually shocking that the game is so good, right?
I guess not, because they describe a very arduous development that was striving for a very serious milestone. You know, something that suddenly makes sense to me, and this is a complete theory, not based on anything. Remember when we discussed this in our podcast, that I said at the beginning I didn't like the cinematics, they felt off.
Yes.
And then they grew on me.
You said something about the animation bothered you.
Yeah, and later, when you asked me later, when I advanced in the game, I said that it actually improved, or maybe it grew on me, something changed. But now,
right.
Sven, when he was the Mr. Vincke, when he was in the Q&A, they asked him about the cinematics. And he said that this was something they had zero experience in. They knew nothing of cinematics when they went into this. They just learned it as they went, and they strived for very, very high quality cinematics. So it could be that the beginning of the Act 1 cinematics are the ones that they developed early, and later on they made, they just got better, and the cinematics got better. I don't think they would change everything. I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't know how development of games works. I could be completely off.
Your personal experience from playing the game is you're in Act 3 now or 2? Which act are you now?
I'm in Act 3, yeah.
So you're from your experience, you notice a improvement in the quality of the cinematics as the longer the game goes?
I guess, because things that bothered me before don't bother me anymore. Either they're not there, or I'm not noticing them.
Could it be you just got used to it?
Maybe
you just got used to it. But it is a good theory. I don't know. I mean, I think they would have went back, improved all the animation and they could have even done that with one of the many patches that came out since the game was revealed or came out, right? So who knows? But anyways, back to the subject you were mentioning. Yes, Sven this was describing a lot of issues that they were having, like you said, mainly because of having so many cinematics in the game. If I remember correctly, it's around 9,500 cinematics, which is ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, basically he said that every change that they had to do, every little change that they did in the game, they had to go back and put the changing effect in every cinematic in the game, because all the cinematics are in game, right? It's all in engine, in real time. So they had to go and change all those 9,500 cinematics just for one little change. He gave a door mechanic as an example, something very, very small that they added, and someone had to go and add that change to every single cinematic. I mean, that's the dedication for quality that they were obviously chasing, but it came with a cost, as he said.
Yeah, sure. But actually, what he said about how they dealt with this issue, about having to update their previous cinematics and cutscenes, if you will, in the game, that he said they stopped trying to be on the visionary level with the development all the time. Like he said, we decided to just tell each team what's their goal, what we expect of them, and they just trusted them and let them work. And only later, much later in the development, they started trying to piece everything together. So to save time of overdoing it the same, overcorrecting all the time.
Yeah. But he also mentioned the less pleasant side of our industry, and that's the ever-dreaded crunch. You want to talk to us? Explain to us what he meant?
He was Wrigley in discussing this. He was...
How do you mean?
He was slithering like around the definitions and talking in gray areas. He was using abstract terms like soft overtime instead of heavy crunch. Like those things have numbers behind them that means something tangible, you know?
So yeah, anyway.
This is a lot of gray area. And as long as he doesn't give us numbers, it can be anything. He did say in the end of the interview that he thinks that in most of the cases, no one ever stayed after 8 p.m. Like the studio would be empty.
Yeah.
I'm hoping he knows this for a fact for all studios, because he can only see the one he's staying in.
Yeah.
But anyway...
Their main studio is in Belgium, basically.
And there's like 6 others, so he doesn't know what time they finished.
Yeah.
I hope he does. Anyway, he says that working in the weekends was very, very rare. So if this is true, then yeah, overtime was not overly sensitive. He also said something interesting, that they paid for that overtime, because lots of the companies, like high-tech companies, software companies, they have overtime in the contract. Like your global salary includes overtime in it. So if they need you to stay overtime, it's your pay doesn't change. They can just decide whenever they want that you need to do overtime.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's plenty of interviews with other employees of Larian, not just Sven, and they all seem perfectly happy and content and happy with Sven. But, you know, it's easy to be happy when you're succeeding. But then again, you need to remember that this company is very old. They're nearly 3 decades old. They have a lot of games under their belt. They work together as a team for many, many, many decades. I mean, not all of them, but I mean, probably some of them used to work together for a long time. And they obviously, something is working there. There's probably good vibes there, good conditions, because people look very happy there compared to like some other corporate, you know, AAA big developers where you're just a number and not just a part of a bigger family. But here, there's something unique that happened with the development. I understand this happened mostly because of COVID. The development became, and also because they needed more people, right? Because of the game becoming more and more ambitious and bigger than they first expected. Like you said, they like nearly tripled their size. It seems almost unlikely to be able to succeed in making such a masterpiece of a game. At least that's how most of the gaming community is regarding it, as a masterpiece of a game that was created in such a weird way, where there's a bunch of studios all over Europe working on it in the same time. It's not easy to coordinate.
He gave a reason for that, why they chose to have so many studios that work in parallel, because he wanted to have they work in different time zones, so there's always someone ready to do something if an urgent correction or urgent something shows up.
Yeah.
So they don't have to put people to come to work with, ungodly hours.
Yeah, he mentioned that the studios, that was, by the way, a good answer by him. I don't know if it's the truth or not. It sounds truthful, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
He basically gave that as a good way to counter overtime / crunch hours. Having like a bunch of studios all over the world work on the same project gives you some sort of like a backup. You finish in your time zone, right? You finish working on that thing, you pass it on to the next team. They work on it on the next day or in the same evening, depends on what time zone they are, right? And that way the load is spread more evenly and less people are getting burnt out and having to sacrifice their personal life for their career, basically.
Yeah.
Something which is very, very widespread in the gaming industry, basically.
It's a smart management of time.
Yes.
And this is what people like us have been saying for years, that crunch is a management problem. This means that there's a manager that doesn't plan his time correctly and doesn't plan the time of his workers correctly, or the project, or whatever, giving unrealistic time frames, whatever. If you manage the time correctly and you do things smartly, there you go. You don't get as much crunch or overtime.
I think I agree with you. Of course, good management will obviously lead to much less needed crunch time. However, it's very rare. Even when you have the best of management, like literally the top tier management, even those people make mistakes. Even because they get the most complicated and most ambitious projects usually, right? So the more ambitious the project, the more people you manage, the more moving parts, the more complicated everything is, the more likely something goes wrong. And this is just part of human nature and part of a working space of working together on a project.
Look, I'm not saying overtime should be abolished from the world and never exist in no matter what, okay?
Oh, some people need overtime for like to live, like they need the money.
Yeah, that's something else that's fucked up with capitalism.
Yes. Yeah. We won't get into it.
I'm just saying. The question is how it's done. Like, if they're questioning Mr. Vincke about the overtime, and he's saying it wasn't that bad, they didn't have to work like this or like that, I would ask him simple questions like, what was the average work hour week for the production level, and what was the average for the executive level? Okay? If they also had to put in the crunch time, that also puts it in a different light. Okay? For example, I would wonder if crunch is mandatory. If you let the workers choose which one stays, you have the young people that don't have families, and for them it's easier than a person that has 3 kids, that small kids at home and whatever. The context of life is different for each worker.
Yeah, of course. I think in a relatively small to medium company, like a European based, which is also a big deal because Europe has a very different labor laws and like from like America,
sure.
Right? But even in even like CD Projekt Red, famously they crunched a lot when working on Cyberpunk,
yes.
Like a lot, and on Witcher 3.
100%.
Yes. So even in Europe, this is happening. However, what I think about Larian Studios is it's a relatively small company, right? That I don't think has a culture of a culture of crunch ingrained into it or embedded into it. I think they might ask you to crunch for a very specific small amount of time in order to achieve the goal that you worked for a very long time together. And I think that's a very reasonable thing to ask someone, and most likely they will agree to it, as long as you don't make them do it.
Agreed.
You give them an option.
Agreed.
What I'm saying is many of the big corporations and companies have a very big issue where crunch is ingrained in the culture of the company. It's part of the company's MO. It's in the culture. You're expected to stay overtime all the time.
Yep.
And that's or majority of the time. And if you don't, there will be pressures put upon you, both from your peers, your other workers, like looking at you and giving you the wrong look, because more pressure is falling on their shoulders, right? And your managers giving you like acting weird or giving you all passive aggressive remarks and saying, yeah, sure, go early to be with your birthday with your kid. Sure. It's not like we need you here working on this project. You know, some kind of a snide remark like that.
It's not just that, they will fire them basically. Those companies that size, they always fire people that are the least performing, you know, to improve.
Oh yeah.
So to them you're least performing if you're not doing that. They tell you, we're going to evaluate you badly in your next evaluation. And that's what happened.
Yeah. Anyways, so like we just wanted to talk about this subject. We wanted to show that even Larian, which are considered to be a very, very pro-consumer, very good company right now, at least, right? We'll see what happens in the future, but at least for now, the gaming community appreciates this company, and Sven became kind of a figurehead of the gaming culture in the last 2 years with the success of the game and the things he says on stages. He says all the right things, but even Sven is, as we can see, is not perfect, and Larian is not perfect. They have cracks in their system as well. It's a slippery slope, and every company can start very, very good, even though this company is very old. It's only now that they've broke into mainstream success, and that's usually when things start to slightly go wrong. But we should mention, they're a private company, or privately owned mostly, right? So as long as there's no shareholders to bow to, I think they will remain a pretty positive force in the gaming community.
Indeed.
Alright guys, that's all we got for you now. Let us know in the comments below what you think about this whole thing. Development, if crunch worth it ever, or should you never crunch no matter what? Everything else. Let us know what you think about Larian and Sven saying all those things. And I'm Inconsistency.
I'm Werewolf. See you around.
This is MLC. See you guys.